guys get this together? The superintendent, or who sent you? Anthony was sent by you.
It was a compilation of everyone's ideas.
From, what do you mean everyone's ideas? From the last meeting, or?
Principals, finance committee, administration office, different individuals that have.
Did you see this, Mrs. Romero?
Yes, sir, I did.
So we're going to do this one, or send an email, or?
The one that we worked on today is based off of that email that was sent to the budget committee. And again, these are just proposals. If the budget committee has other proposals that they'd like to put forth, then it's up to the budget committee to
Could the budget
work
committee
on
sit
it.
here next to Mr. Gay? Please.
This is pretty much a summary of what that is. If there's any questions that are not addressed by the proposals, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, then we will respond to those if that's your choice.
Okay, before we continue, on our first meeting, we were okay with budget. Then the second meeting, we were $500,000 short, then $600,000 short. So how, can somebody explain that? Why was there the drastic difference between one meeting to another meeting?
Ms. Padilla?
I can elaborate on that. When Mr. Sullivan did the first budget, there was the $300,000 that we could see right offhand, right away. Then when we encumbered the benefits and encumbered the rest of the stuff that wasn't encumbered on the line item, that's when the other 300 came into place. And the reason that the second 300,000 were not discussed was because we figured, well, Mr. Sullivan is discussing the first 300,000. Later on at another meeting, the other 300,000 would have been discussed. That's the reason for it, because at the very beginning we did see the 300,000 right away, being that we had already used the cash balance of $800,000 that we had for this year's budget. We knew that there was going to be a deficit of $600,000, but at that time he had only put the $300,000 to present to you people without the encumbrances on the guideline. Once we encumbered, we saw the other $300,000, but we knew that this was coming all along. We had been using cash balance to build budget.
When you say we knew, was that you and Mr. Sullivan together, or just you?
No, the finance office knew.
And was Mr. Sullivan told?
Well, I don't know if directly told, but the guidelines were being ran like every day.
So, Ms. Padilla, like all of this cash balance, we've been expending it over just this last year, or over the last few years, because budget has been short with what we're getting funded from the state on that state equalization grant. It's not enough money, so basically we were taking what we had in cash balance and using it to operate our school, to keep our employees paid and to keep our. So where do we get some more cash balance, Ms. Padilla?
Well, this cash balance has been we've been saving that cash balance. We had been operating the district fine with saving all that cash balance. But as the enrollment declined, we never laid off people, and I mean the superintendent, we never, nothing. We just continued. The students were declining, but yet we were keeping the same employees. So in order to be a budget, we had to use the cash balance. And the auditors presented that to the board. They presented it every single year. Your district is going to go on the hole if you don't start laying off people, if you don't start doing what you need to do, because the cash balance ends.
And basically, if I remember correctly, their recommendations were things like take your classrooms and make them larger. Instead of having 14 or 15 students per classroom, we recommend that you have maybe 24, or whatever the limit is per grade, and if you go over, hire an EA because that's a lower salary.
And as people were retiring, they were being replaced, plus additional employees were being hired.
So then we
And
should-
on those, excuse me, Mr. Trujillo, on those additional employees, Ms. Padilla, where were the majority of those employees being hired? Were we hiring them to put them into our elementary to teach? Were we hiring them in our maintenance, in our cafeteria, in our administrative? You know, where was the impact seen?
A lot of them went for special ed. In addition, we used to have to replace and add additional EAs, and that was for special ed.
And that expense that we've seen in the special ed department,
Was paid out of operation.
I've only seen one employee added to special ed.
but it's the
Teacher.
services, right, the
EA
ancillary.
plus your OT, your PT, your other contract
That's always been
services.
there because it's mandatory from the state. So what do you mean we added them?
We had to, it's mandatory, and the special ed director can elaborate to that a little bit more.
It probably goes by case, because as the needs,
Right.
as the needs come up, as your students get enrolled and progress in the district. Now, what about this maintenance of effort that the federal government is telling us the state of New Mexico is not meeting maintenance of effort in special ed? How's that gonna affect us if we lose money from there? Because they're looking at it affecting the entire state.
All the federal programs. All federal programs would be affected by that.
So Ms. Romero, proposal number one has a RIF, one FTE. This board said not to RIF no teachers.
If you look right above there, Mr. Trujillo, where it's in bold, it talks about the goal would be to reassign all affected employees to vacant positions. It's not in regard to, since our numbers are decreasing, people can be shifted around. We're at that point to where we can, shift or open up positions and absorb those, the people that would be ripped, in essence, can either slide into positions or they can apply for these positions. But if you take a look at, for example, proposal number one is to RIF one middle school employee, and the workload or the class load would be absorbed by 2/3 by the high school, another high school staff. As it was mentioned, this was a combined effort in regard to the admin office and the administrators of the district as well as the finance office. The subjects that would be affected at the high school would be creative writing and, Mr. Chavez, what was the other subject that would be
We
affected?
would probably have to tap into the business classes and do the New Mexico history, middle school.
Okay, so continue explaining your proposal one.
Okay, in regard to proposal one, pretty much as we mentioned, one teacher would be cut and the class or course load would be absorbed by, the 2/3 of the courses would be absorbed by high school teachers. And then again, it would affect our creative writing at the high school, our creative writing classes, and a couple of business classes. Because those two particular teachers from the high school would actually be providing services to middle school students. Two
And they would
classes
be
each.
providing the language arts, English.
They would be doing history, teaching history, yes ma'am.
So these three classes we mentioned are actually what we would look at the high school students being affected, like
Yes.
their access cut
Yes,
off.
ma'am.
Okay.
And we've looked at that, and I guess to clarify what was mentioned here, that teacher at middle school would be reassigned, would not be terminated. It would be reassigned somewhere else. And who would absorb those classes would be, of the 6 classes that a teacher teaches, 4 of those would be absorbed by high school teachers. And we've entertained different options there, and that's the one that we're looking at right now. But I guess to clarify this a little bit further, the maximum that we can absorb at the high school is probably 4 classes, because we do not want to have our high school students lose out on those other opportunities for electives, for example. So the maximum that we can absorb at this time would be 4 classes.
So how does it affect our business class and our other classes?
We would have to combine some of those business classes. There's options that we could say, well, we can offer some classes on odd years and others in even years and so on. The class loads in those classes are pretty much what the determining factors that have led us to this decision. So, for example, and please don't hang Mrs. Lombok here, but we've already combined a accounting 1 and accounting 2. Would we offer that every other year? I don't know. We'll have to entertain that thought. What other classes does she teach that we could adjust, I guess, to make it clear? It's not like we're going to eliminate those opportunities for those students. Like right now, the creative writing classes would have to be sacrificed. Can we substitute with something else, or would someone else pick up that creative writing? That's still on the table, but.
You're talking about a post-secondary, like Luna,
Yes.
picking that up?
Yes.
Well, what about the opportunities for like your freshmen and sophomores?
That's the key, and I'm glad you bring that up to the table, because just today I'm dealing with Highlands, and Mrs. Vigil is here, and talking to the dual credit people at Highlands. They're willing to do a business 110, am I correct? Mondays through Fridays from 8 to 8:50. Is that enough to, God, I don't want to use the word satisfy, but the need of the students with some of the business classes? That's something we're looking at. But we, like I said before, folks, we gotta cut everywhere. Sadly.
The students will use those business classes for the rest of their life.
Yes, so we'll go
Can
ahead.
I add to that? Last year, we did not have a social studies teacher. The district didn't even hire one. And 3 high school teachers, including myself, we picked up the load at the middle school. And to keep the business classes intact, I was running an accounting 1 and accounting 2 class at the same time. I was doing a computer fundamentals 1 and computer fundamentals 2 at the same time. I had a class load of over 150 kids, which is fine. You know, as long as my kids in BPA and the business part of it, they don't lack from it, I don't care. And I told Mr. Chavez that before. I just don't want any of the business classes cut. This year, I do only have an accounting 1 class by itself, and I have an accounting 2 class by itself, and they are smaller classes. You combine them, I've done it before, I've done it many times, I can do it again.
But you can see by having that smaller class how successful your students were.
Yes, there's usually a big increase in the success with the smaller kids because they get more into it. But have to do what you have to do.
Continue.
Okay, proposal number 2 is to RIF 1 FTE from the elementary, and there's 2 different options that are doable, and they've been discussed, I was told, with the staff, and that will be directly impacted, and the staff was okay with those proposals. And that would give us a max savings of $64,390, including benefits.
And you mentioned the staff was okay with the proposal. What do you mean, what staff?
The staff that would be impacted with either doing a combination class or the 5th grade class being at larger numbers. Am I right in saying that, Ms. Quintana?
Yes.
So we're gonna double up the class to how many students?
How many students?
Right now, there's, in 4th grade, there are 29 students. And we talked about two different options, either taking one fifth grade class, one fourth grade class in their entirety, and then do a combination class, a smaller class of fourth and fifth combined. And we talked to the teachers about that, and they're fine with that. One of the teachers has already been earmarked to do that combination if we do it that way. Or the fourth grade class be one big fifth grade class next year of 29 kids, and the fifth grade teacher is okay with taking those as well. So, and that would leave two small fourth grade classes of 15 and 15, because there's 30 kids now in third grade.
The teachers are okay with it, how about the kids? Did you guys ask the kids?
Well, I mean, there's nothing that's ideal. I mean, you know, I know the high school wants to keep their small numbers, but I counted the numbers at the high school. There's 18 classes that have 10 or less kids. You know, and it's ideal. Yeah, everybody wants to have 10 or less kids, but, I mean, you have to cut something. You know, you can't make up a $600,000 deficit with not impacting staff when 85% of your budget is personnel. I mean, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. I think it would be nice to have small classes of 10 and under, but I don't think that luxury is available anymore.
What's our max as far as a fourth grade class or a fifth grade class? What's our max?
The state statute requires that when you fourth and fifth combined, you have to have an average of 24. The average. In other words, you take all your fourth and fifth graders together. So that's a total of 59 kids. If you divide that by the three classes, that's an average of 19.6.
And if we make one big class of fourth grade students, like you said, there would be 29?
There would be 29 in that particular class. If we use that model, you know, we don't have to do it like that. We could do a smaller class of fourth grade, a smaller class of fifth grade of about 23, 24 kids, and then one combination class of fourth and fifth combined with one teacher. And that would be a smaller class of like 11.
I only ask, ma'am, because I have a concern regarding putting a group of fourth grade students with a group of fifth grade students and thinking that they're going to be okay with that. You know, I mean, these students just passed on to fifth grade, and we're setting them in a class with fourth graders. And not to say one's less than the other, it's just that how do you boost their morale at that point in time? How do you ensure their self-esteem is still where it needs to be?
I mean, lots of smaller districts do that. You have combination classes because you can't justify having one teacher in fourth grade if you only had 6 kids. You know, lots of districts do that, and unfortunately, Mora is getting to the place where we are just, you know, losing enrollment where we're functioning as other small districts do. I mean, that's commonplace. I was principal at Sapeo for 4 years. All of our classes are combination there, and it's just commonplace. You know, and the kids don't suffer that. You know, as long as you have a good teacher who can manage that educational setting, and I believe we do have one that can do that, and she's up to the challenge. And so I think that we'll be fine. We'll have to really look at who are the kids that are placed in those classes. You know, of course, you don't want to have a lot of discipline problems and that kind of stuff. I'm happy to say my fourth graders going into fifth grade is an excellent class. They are, a high percentage of them are proficient, and, you know, in third grade, you know, I expect high marks from them this year, and all of the data shows that they're, you know, top-notch class.
Okay, proposal number 3 is reassign administrative duties, make one administrator the director of federal and student support programs, and the maximum savings would be $33,000, which is figured by taking increments that were previously paid to other people and tacking them onto that particular person's job description.
The total salary, what would be the total salary?
The minimum, one minimum salary would be $60,000. The other would be $70,000 that are being considered for that particular position, or would be. Any other questions on 3? Proposal 4 would be 3 RIVs and 1 vacancy and clerical support. That would be an average savings of 25,000 times the 4 individuals, again, 3 positions that would be eliminated, and 1 that is a vacancy for 100,000, and then plus the benefits, a savings of 137,000.
Where's that vacancy at, Mr. Chairman? We're not gonna keep going.
Right now, it's an EA position.
EA position in special ed or operations?
For the cut?
And then number 4.
Oh, okay, I apologize. That is one person that's assigned to testing at this time. But that testing would be absorbed by somebody else in the district, and that particular person could be absorbed into the vacancies that are going to exist within the district.
And you're talking briefing 3?
3 individuals, 1 actually, 1.5 out of the central office, and the other 2, let me, this one was part of okay, a half-time activities out of this office and a half, okay. The secretary, I apologize, secretarial position, secretary receptionist out of the central office, the testing assistant, and then a half of activities and half health.
Health, you said was the last one? Health?
Health, yes ma'am.
And we'll still be able to meet our requirements now that that's in our.
Yes.
Have health meeting from nurse's office?
Ms. Valdez, would you elaborate on that?
Yes, health assistants are title.
You want to leave her or he, or you want to leave that position from?
You raise the position and the individuals would be.
They'd be reassigned and absorbed into other
Depending
positions.
on the.
But that particular,
higher.
yeah, you have to follow the RIF
Policies.
seniority rules that are
There
in
explain
the
so
district.
I can understand, please. Sorry.
Did you understand that, Mr.
No, go ahead.
In regard to the RIF policy that's in the district, you would have to go based on seniority. And again, those positions really were created because of the RIFs.
So when you talk
So you
seniority,
start
when you
from
talk
the bottom.
seniority, every department's different. Every, say the cafeteria, the nurse's office.
It's based on your classification and your date of hire. And based on those dates of hire, again, when we're looking at those RIFs, we look at the more current, first one hired, first one RIFed, in other words. So that's how those vacancies were looked at.
Sometimes, those like positions like the health one, isn't there like specialized training or because of the, I don't know if it's the HIPAA or that employee would have received that, whereas other clerical staff wouldn't have? Does that?
Well, the thing about it is that position would not be filled per se as a position itself. Someone else was hired to work in the health office that could absorb the different requirements of or the duties of that particular individual.
So
Any
it
other
was
questions?
half health, half activities, one, it's a full-time testing assistant,
Right,
and
the secretary
receptionist.
receptionist, yes ma'am.
So the central office staff that
would
comes
be
out of the
1.5,
the secretary receptionist and the activities,
the activities
that
bookkeeper.
comes out of
Yes, ma'am.
administrative.
Any questions from the committee? Go ahead.
Okay, in regard to proposal 5, it's one full-time equivalent technician for a savings of $26,223. This is maintenance stuff. I know technician might be a word that people kind of wonder what technician is, if it's the IT person for the district. No, it's not, it's maintenance. I'll move on then to proposal number 6. Would be to reduce the increments for activities and athletics generally by 10%, for a savings of $9,238 from the activities and $8,143 from athletics.
Explain activities, what would be?
The activities are all the different increments. I think you received an email, BPA, skiing, student government. I don't have a list with me, Mr. Trujillo, but
Okay.
Ms. Valdez wants to go ahead and make some copies. I apologize for that.
Superintendent Romero, does that include coaches' stipends? Or
The
no?
athletic piece of it does include all the coaching stipends. Again, to reduce them by 10%. I know some other districts have gone head coach 2,000, assistant coach 1,000. These are other things other districts have done, but the proposal is to just go ahead and try 10%. And again, it's just a proposal. These are proposals for your look at.
Any other questions? Proposal 7.
Proposal number 7 is one furlough day. Those employees that work 185 days would give up 1 day, and for a savings of $7,732. Employees from 203 days to 202, a savings of $605. Those are your secretary clerical. And your 240 and your exempt employees, would be 1,766 savings for a total of 10,103. And the central office had actually proposed to do a 5-day furlough, but it was decided that probably would be best to just keep it a day across the district if that's how we were going to go, so that everyone would be treated equally.
Questions?
Go back to proposal 6, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
It says here to cut out skiing completely.
Right.
We went 10% on everything else and skiing completely.
There was discussion in regard to skiing. It's, there's questions in regard to it being during the school day. The person that's sponsor is gone from the classroom to go with the student skiing. There is an option for our students to ski on Saturdays, and if there's a sponsor that would like to sponsor the activity, I believe they get a free lift ticket and whatever it is that they need to ski. So the concern is, having the kids out of the classroom. How many days, Ms. Quintana, are the kids gone from the classroom, or Mr.?
I think they went 8 times this year, and they're half days, they're not the whole day. They go after lunch.
8 afternoons, 8 Wednesdays. And the thought was that, it does impact instruction because the kids are gone from the classroom and they're missing instruction. So that was the thought behind that.
Questions? How many kids are skiing? How many kids go? How
I
many?
need some help there since I've been gone, Ms. Quintana.
It just depends on the day. I'm not sure. I know I don't know school-wide, but at the elementary, we typically have anywhere from like 15 to 20 kids.
At the middle school, we have about 9.
24.
High school, probably not more than half a dozen.
Can we get them kids here on our next board meeting and ask them how they feel about skiing?
I chaperoned the school bus there anywhere from absolutely jammed on the first, all the school bus can hold, down to about 16 or 18 on the slowest days.
Any other questions?
And I think in that proposal, it was just to cut the stipend. It wasn't really just to cut skiing altogether, right? Was that included in that number there? I mean, is it the cut of the fuel and cut of the bus and all of
You
that?
can correct me if I'm wrong, the thought behind it, and again, chime in, the different principals can chime in. I was under the assumption that it would be completely cut. And again, it's an option that's there if students want to go skiing on Saturdays, but Mr. Chavez, I don't know, what was your...
I believe
What was your
you've
thought on
explained
it?
it the way I understood it.
Okay.
That's the way it was. That's the way it was discussed.
The only thing that worries me on Saturdays is there's a lot of people on Saturdays, so you don't want the kids there, there's a chance of them getting hurt, because there's a lot of people on Saturdays.
I do believe that they block off, because this year they gave the option for schools to select Saturdays if they want. So they black out days that are just for school.
On Saturdays.
If you need any more information on any of these, of course, I'm going to go ahead and, Mr. Sullivan is going to go ahead and assist us with you all voting for the top 3 picks that you would like to, well, actually, I shouldn't say you all, it should be the budget committee that gets the vote, okay, in regard to these proposals.
Proposal number 8.
Oh, I apologize. Number 8 is auctioning off for school vehicles for a savings of $16,000. And again, this isn't, we're not going to see this, these funds regenerated year after year, so it would just be a one-time shot, once the cars are sold. It would be something that would assist us for this year, but then, would be something that, again.
Which 4 vehicles? Why only 4?
Miss,
We would be selling the 2 crowns, the white and the brown. We'd be selling the Corsica and another one to make it 4.
The Taurus,
The Taurus.
How many vehicles do we have total?
12 outside. 12.
How many title?
Title vehicles, 12 that we have, just because the trucks and those are parked out there, the custodian used those.
Why do we need that diesel truck out there? How many times was it used this year?
Because, well, the reason that truck was bought with transportation funding, because the school was responsible for taking audits of your routes twice a year or 3 times a year. That's the reason that diesel truck was bought, and it was bought from transportation.
I have a question. Did we talk to the section heads and get a justification of why they need so many vehicles or anything like that we discussed last time?
I haven't gone to them, Mr. Behe, because we've been pretty bombarded just trying to compile information, get input from different people from throughout the district. You know, as I mentioned, we did meet as administrators, and the finance side of the house also met to compile these proposals that are in front of you right now, and our time has been consumed with that. You know, I can move on to other things once we get past the issues that we're having right now. Again, these are proposals, they're out there, and if you need more information, want us, the rest of us to gather any more information for you, then let us know.
Did you say we have how many vehicles? 12?
Like 12 that we have that are parked here in the front, because the maintenance trucks are in the back.
The other one,
My concern is, do we need all those vehicles or not? Can we eliminate some of them?
no, exactly, we need that limousine, that white one, that limousine. And,
Oh, the Crown, those are the Crown. Oh, those are used, the Yukons are used to take smaller groups, students, yeah, cross-country and small groups, those are the Yukons that are used for that. Mesa sometimes when it takes a few,
But the auction, it won't be, won't fall till next year.
and he's not, we won't have that money next year anyway.
no, until next year.
It won't be till next year.
Yes.
Because he probably couldn't even auction it this year. He probably couldn't auction it off this year anyways.
When you say 15,000 savings, do you mean 15,000 income from the sale of them, or do you mean a reduction in overhead, not having insurance and maintenance and tires and all that? What's that 15 mean?
Would be the revenue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I understand state statutes on budget hearing of this nature, the public is allowed to comment and recommend, right?
Yes, sir.
Based on what Agnes said a while ago and what you guys discussed, this district has been making budget by using cash balances, right? For a few years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, now that you're in this deeper problem, my question to the board would be, and past boards, why was this allowed to continue so long using the cash balances? To me, it's kind of crazy, you know.
It goes back into zero.
Right?
But you're right.
Cash balances, you know, I mean, this should have stopped 4, 5, 6 years ago.
I agree.
3 years ago, when I came to a meeting of this nature, there was only one person besides the staff, and that was me, or maybe 4 years ago. At that time, I had recommended or made a comment that none of the principals that are here now were here at the time, but there was 2 other ones, and I had recommended that the school consider having one principal for both elementary and middle school. I think that still goes.
I think we should have one principal for all 400 students.
That's even better. For sure, one for the middle school and elementary. Thank you.
Okay, you had
Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Romero. First of all, it was very nice to be here and see folks today, but it wasn't a fun day. Let me make that perfectly clear. I'd like to compliment the superintendent and the staff for being very thoughtful and thorough in generating some of these options. And to Mr. Romero's earlier comments, this has been going on around the state of New Mexico in every district for the last 5 years. When districts were, and the state was faced with budget cuts, they trickled down quickly to school districts, and school districts that were scrambling to preserve programs and preserve jobs, perhaps unwisely dipped into cash balances, but it happened everywhere. I monitor news articles from other districts around the state, and I can guarantee you these conversations are going on. It's not unique to Mora, New Mexico. The Moriarty district, with which I'm very familiar, worked there for 20 years, was in the newspaper. They're facing, I think it's a $3.1 million deficit. So it was well, whatever it was. They were going to have to lose 31 teaching staff to make that budget for next year. So it's pretty dramatic. And one thing I want to comment on, when we talked about, you know, the deficit or the target, we had some information at different times. The $300,000, you can see it, it's in those obligations. The 1% statutory raise, teacher movement on the 3-tier system, pension swaps, that's a term that's been used in the legislature. What it essentially is a shift back to the employer that had been picked up by employees over the last several years. The health benefit increase, that's unavoidable. And the unemployment obligation, I saw where Rio Rancho in today's paper, their unemployment increase was $931,000 for the 12-13 school year. So again, these problems aren't due to any mismanagement or not being prepared. They've just been things that have been coming at districts, you know, left and right. But those totals were about $300,000 in the obligations. The increase in the unit value didn't offset the decline in enrollment. It left us, our state equalization guarantee for next year compared to this year was 11,000 less. 11,000 and change, I don't recall the exact number, Agnes, but so even with an increase to the unit value, because we lost units, our budget was going to be less even before these obligations kicked in. There's been a slight change from the $600,000 based on conversations that I had with Agnes over the weekend and then with Ms. Romero this morning. Originally, an administrative group had said, you know, what's a nice target in these tough times to maintain as a cash balance? And we came up with about $200,000 as a target. It may not be realistic. Frankly, it may not be. If you were considering applying for emergency supplemental monies, and a whole lot more, there are about 23 that were getting emergency monies this year out of 89. There's probably going to be more that are going to make requests this year because of what's going on, right, like what's going on here. But the state's target for your cash balance is between 2 and 3% before you'll be considered. If you're above that, even if they want to grant you money, they're going to reduce it by the amount you exceeded their threshold. 200,000 would put Mora above 2%. It would be almost 5%. So, you know, it's nice to have that cushion, and I would encourage it. But the other thing that came up in my conversation with Ms. Padilla is that she wanted to make sure that there were money set aside for legal obligations. You recall this year, we had a $30,000 initial budgeted item. We increased that, I think it was by $56,000, and we've already spent, you know, about $80,000. You know, we've got a little bit left after an increase, and we've got bills that are still being racked up. So in my conversations with Ms. Padilla and Ms. Romero, I said, I don't know that you need $200,000 in cash reserves and another $200,000 for legal obligations and the potential for some settlements as a result of those legal issues that, you know, you all are very familiar with. My recommendation to Ms. Romero was that you consider cash reserve target of $200,000 and include legal obligations there. If you want to set it aside as a line item in legal obligations, it would reduce your cash balance, but it might get you into the territory by which you would be eligible to apply for emergency supplemental funding as well. I did share with Ms. Romero the narrative that accompanied the emergency supplemental request for the Roy schools last year at this time for this current school year. And I worked on just a draft, kind of trying to merge some of these ideas into what might be a request if Mora feels the need, after all it's said and done, as you get closer to submitting your budget, at least you'd be positioned in some fashion to do it. But as I say, I think you guys have done a great job of generating some creative ideas. You haven't given in to the tendency I think a lot of districts have to say everything's off the table or this is off the table. At least you're open to those suggestions. If you were able to get, I'd say, 2/3 of your whole covered by consensus discussions tonight, that would be really a good achievement. I think that when you get down to that last bit, there's probably going to be more digging in of heels and resistance to some of the possible changes that would be necessary. One thought that I did share with Ms. Romero, and didn't know who she might want to involve in Mr. Trujillo. I think it's either yours or Mr. Vasquez's call. You as the chair and Mr. Vasquez as the chairman of the budget committee. You could give cards to the folks that you wish to vote. And I would encourage then whoever has the cards that they identify from these 8 proposals their top 3. Turn in the cards and we'll tally them up and see if some things clearly emerge as what you could pretty well support. And as I say, you could have all 5 board members or just the 2 that were members of the budget committee now so that the other 3 have deniable plausibility at the final vote. or you can, kind of poll them on the side. But I think it might be instructive to at least honor the work that these folks did over the last several days and get, your direction and the committee's direction on where to go next. I sort of took this one off the table. I think that was a given, that you were looking to save at least $103,990 by not replacing the chief operating officer position that was still in this year's budget. And then these others are the ones that Ms. Romero has very, very thoroughly outlined for you. But Mr. Trujillo, I'm at your disposal as far as how you would like to proceed to kind of get a sense of the committee and the board's opinions on some of these ideas. Should it be everybody or just the committee?
You guys want to dream up?
No.
Come on.
No.
I think all 5 board members and the committee then.
And the committee
I have
members?
I have a comment. Personally, I don't feel comfortable in picking or voting, simply because every piece of paper that I have obtained is different from the budget. The one that was sent to me has totally different numbers than the one that's given to me today. And it doesn't make sense with the one that was given us at the second meeting. So every piece of paper here on the budget is different.
That's the one you got emailed this morning?
This morning and then tonight, and they don't, this one, but then the 79 CO, almost the 80,000, the social work salary is the almost $5,200 difference. I mean, it's just.
I kind of think that benefits were included on the last one.
It's
20,000
benefits.
And then on the total deficit,
It's 30%.
37%. Benefits are 37%.
Somebody can explain that, can I? Want to email that?
So basically what you did was what you emailed this morning, you used it to break down and come up with this, right?
I think there's been some fine tuning as additional information has come in.
so this is the.
I would say that the earlier numbers were probably drafts and we're getting closer, but Agnes could probably tell you that even a projected cash balance will look different next week than it looks this week. But Ms. Romero, Ms. Petria, I would certainly recommend more discussion until people are comfortable that they have all the information. But the numbers have been, getting finer tuned. I don't think it's meant to be deceptive in any way.
I have some comments or some questions because obviously some of us don't have the same paperwork the rest of you do. But Ms. Romero on proposal 6 said 10%, and yes, my ears were open when she mentioned BPA as far as the stipend and stuff. And then it says over $8,000 in athletics, but I know on another piece of paper I saw a while ago it said $15,000 cut from BPA. I don't know where you guys get $15,000 from, but I just have a comment to make to all this. On your athletics that you guys are putting together, my question is, are you including a football team? Is football included in your athletics this coming year?
It is.
It is?
It is.
So how come you keep sticking money into a sinkhole? And sorry to say, but football has been a sinkhole since 2006. We have not had a successful program. It's gone from not enough kids, and we finally have enough kids, and then we don't have kids. We don't have a football field, so football always has to travel. It doesn't make any money. It doesn't generate any money like your other sports, but we're going to keep it. My understanding is there's a list out there of football players. There's 30 football players on the list. Out of those 30, 12 are ineligible. They don't have grades.
Sinkhole or no sinkhole, it's for the kids, Mrs. Lombard.
I know, but hold on.
If it's only one
but
kid,
you're
it's
gonna,
okay.
But you're going to cut from other programs to put the
Don't call it a
football.
sinkhole.
Well, to put the football program back together. Well, we don't even have enough kids because you have 12 that are ineligible without grades. You have 18 left. Out of those 18, how many of them are middle school kids that actually play middle school, 7th, 8th, 9th, middle school football? That's why our program isn't successful, is because we never have enough kids. And every year we get fined. They went and they played at Highlands, and I don't know where the money went for the Highlands. Did it go to Highlands or did it go to Mora? Nobody knows. Nobody's ever seen that money. I'm sorry to call it a sinkhole, but you're going to sit here and cut $15,000 from BPA according to somebody's paper. Hold on.
That's out there, Ms. Lombard.
But it's there. It's on somebody's paper. You're going to cut $15,000 from helping us with BPA, and I have an average GPA of 3.6 on my kids. I have 48 kids that are more than eligible to participate. So let's cut money from them and put it into the football sinkhole. You're going to put it into a program that obviously does not. You're going to put money for how many kids? 9 versus 48?
Well, if it's one kid, it's one kid.
Not when it's a team. You can't play with one kid. You can't even play with 10.
It's no different. 9 kids playing football, 9 kids on BPA. What's the difference? Kids are kids. In my opinion, Mrs. Lombard. Okay, Mrs. Romero, what was the recommendation, or are we going to vote all 5 board members and the committee, or do you continue discussing?
Do you have anything from the committee maybe that you want to share with us, Mr. McGill?
Read.
I just got a few comments. Number one, on these proposals that, let's say we vote on them or so forth, they essentially then are going to be the recommendations from the finance committee or the budget committee, excuse me, to go forward to the board. And I understand that. I really do agree with Mrs. Aragon here. I'm not as comfortable looking at them, and the one reason is because this is the first time I've seen them in this manner. I would feel more comfortable looking at them overnight, getting a feel for them, and maybe having another meeting this week and then having that discussion more in depth. And part of it is based on, by looking at the list of the amount of proposals, I know all of them aren't going to fly because they're not, from my understanding is, I don't know if there's that many vacant positions to make all of these happen. From the initial first meeting that we had with the budget committee, there were 5 positions leaving. And that was up $127,000 or something like that, savings, if I'm right, something like that. And for those to work out, each proposal 1 through 8 would have to have there's a RIF in each one.
Right.
Do we have that many vacancies? That would be able to happen, or are we counting on other folks retiring, that haven't been announced yet? And I don't know if that's legal to do. So that's just one comment on that. My next comment is, as I went through each of these, I think they're viable and really good suggestions. I know that my feeling about voting for them right now isn't, or my confidence level isn't that high, but just based on what I reviewed here, when you're looking at a $504,000 deficit, I don't know how there won't be an impact somewhere on some child at some point. And I know that was the proposal put forward upon us by the chairman here of the finance committee. Said his main goal was not to affect the children in any manner. And that's kind of what I want to go for with too, because my kids go to school here, and my son goes to school here, and I think Mora is an excellent school district. But I do have some other comments that aren't totally on this, but they're based on budget. And one of them is in terms of the stipends or increments or entitlements or whatever we call them in the school. My question was on that is is there a formula for that? How are those amounts created? Like, if I'm going to be the coordinator for middle school testing, is it based on how many hours I'm going to work based on a certain salary amount, or is it just a number it's $1,000 for that? And if I am because when I went over all those increments, some of them were out of line with what I thought they should. Just on my personal, I don't want to use my professional opinion on those because I can't do that legally. But I'm looking at someone doing secretarial work getting $2,600 or $3,600. I can't remember the amount. Are those types of stipends or increments done on top of their other job duties? So if they are they doing them when they're already getting paid for their original position? So if that's true, then that's not right. Do they need to stay late after work and accomplish those duties or not? Because to me it's double dipping. So there's money to be saved right there, easily. I'm not trying to criticize anybody's position or anything. I'm just looking at it from the outside. And that was the first thing that drew my eye. I'm like, well, if I'm doing this position and I'm already getting paid for a job in the school district and I'm accruing additional duties, it's a different thing. But if I'm applying for or getting a stipend, then that needs to be done outside of my work day. And then how is that work logged? How is it monitored? Are people signing for it? And at what pay rate are they getting paid? Is it exceeding what their current pay rate is with the school district now?
I've been asking that question for the last 10 years, Mr. Vigil, and I never got an answer. Maybe this year Ms. Romero can get us an answer to that.
But I know these are difficult questions to ask, but that's just a question coming from myself. When I'm looking at a budget and a deficit of $504,000 for the school, and then seeing the increments that are out there and how those decisions get made, who makes those decisions to say, you as this position are going to get $2,500, and as an assistant coach you're getting $1,800? Is it based on professional aptitude? Is it, things like that I think really, I would like to have the proof in the pudding to see how these things are paid out, because then you can apply those immediate savings to these. And if they're doing those work duties during their work day, then that's just part of their job, and then they shouldn't get that increment because they're already doing it during the work day and getting paid double for that same work. So I would recommend maybe a proposal within here to eliminate a lot of those stipends, because I know that the second meeting that we had, Mrs. Romero talked about that the state at some point said that we should not have stipends or things like that, that is something that is of the past. I don't know. But, you know, I'm worried, I'm just as worried as you folks behind that little counter there where we're trying not to have an impact on children, but it seems like that money isn't going to the kids. I mean, if I'm getting a stipend, I know that money's not going to the kids. It all depends on what you're doing, and I know some of these are tied to federal funds. I know the Title I director and these other ones, they're earning their money, because that's part of their, that's an accretion of duties. That's on top of what their job is. But there's some of these other ones that, I'm assuming they're doing that work after hours, but then who's responsible for them after hours? Who's liable for them after hours? Are they allowed to work from home? And then who's responsible for them at home? Do they have work agreements to work from home and charge the school for that amount of money? These are just questions I had. Those agreements probably exist. I'm not trying to say that they probably, you know, they must in order for them to get paid at some point. So that's that. And then the other thing was looking at proposal number 8. I don't know how that's going to help the school in any manner with the budget. You know, $16,000 is something that, and proposal number 7. I mean, that's puddles in the water for me in terms of looking the amounts of money that the school is in deficit. I think these ones should be considered when you're at the end. Or you know, when you have a gap of $50,000 left to cover, then we apply some of these savings measures. What I do like is at least they're on the table already, so we're aware of them, and it's a good thing. So I'm not criticizing them in that manner, but to have them as an initial proposal to eliminate, to save, when we're looking at that large amount of money in deficit, I don't know if it's a viable option right now. My other questions were totally based on the total deficit for the school. The last meeting that we attended, I know when we were walking out of the room, we were looking at $304,000 in the hole. And then we realized at that point that we did need some cash reserves of $200,000, and I think Mrs. Padilla brought that up. She said, you know, that's just something that we have to consider, because that is used for the liability portion of the school's budget. Lawsuits happen, unfortunately, and it's a cost of doing business anywhere. But my other question is, where then is the other portion that we did discuss, and that was the floating of federal projects. Because Mr. Sullivan explained at the very first meeting that there also needs to be some money set aside for floating federal projects that don't get funded up front by the school district, by the federal government. It takes a while before the money comes in, so that money to pay their salaries, and Mrs. Padilla explained this, she said, we have to pay them out, because if we don't, well, we're running a deficit, we're not allowed to. So where's that money included in this deficit? And if it's not, should it be? And so then, if what I'm saying is true, then that means that our deficit truly isn't $504,000. It's probably a little greater than that. And so I just feel, that's why I'm uncomfortable voting on this right now. I would like to have a true picture of what the deficit is in the school. So at that point, then I feel much more comfortable about putting my name or my vote next to a little box or a check mark, Mr. Sullivan, that I would feel more confident that I'm not exposing Mora School students to anything that has long-term effects for the future. And then one of the other things that I just wanted to say, Mr. Sullivan did explain also on the very first meeting that the following year's budget for the next school year, not this upcoming one, but the next one, looks even more dire based on projections. Now, I don't want to delve that far into the future, but I think that when the 40-day count comes to the school, and we have a better idea of what the school's enrollment is, I would advise that another finance committee is put together to immediately begin on the budget for that one, because we'll have a better idea of what those numbers are going to be, because if it does come to fruition, we're looking even worse than next year. Because then for sure, rifts will have to happen, and that means people actually losing their employment here in the school district, not just getting shuffled.
I would just like some clarification on a comment that was made at the last board meeting that's not included in this plan, and and how is that gonna impact, but at the last board meeting, it was mentioned that, because of Obama and the new rule, that they were going to be having to tax, they were gonna have to have health benefits for employees who were 15 hours or more. And that's not included here. Is that a fact or not? Or what's the status on that? Because that's not included in this budget.
Ms. Padilla, can you answer that?
It is a fact. We will have to offer all the benefits to part-time employees.
Does that mean substitute teachers as well? Teachers that come and
Depending how
sub?
many hours they work.
So if you would be creating a budget for next year, then you would look at this last year and you would see how many hours were paid out to substitutes, and then you could come out with somewhat of a budget, and that's not here. So what are we looking at there?
I mean, that's more money to add to the deficit.
That's more.
And that's all I want is a firm number that I feel confident in my ability to present to the board any proposals for cuts, because they're cuts, and for personnel movement. And right now, if I'm being asked to vote, I'm just not comfortable with that right now. Once we get those firmer numbers, then I am comfortable putting, saying, yeah, let's do this and that, because my only issue is, let's say we settle some of these things, well, the next meeting something else might come up, and unfortunately, it's gonna mean more of our time, but a reduction of how we do business, and an effect on, because the number's gonna get bigger. It's gonna eventually seem to creep into the school kids' education opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Abid. For Cindy. So all three committee members feel that way. Can you get that information for Mr. Vasquez? I guess you're the chair of the committee, when you can have another meeting, or do you go that route?
We can do that. I'll open it up to you guys as far as recommendations, as far as when you guys feel it would be a better time to have a meeting.
I mean, I'm free this week. I mean, I want to make sure that I give my best effort. I'm giving up my time, and whatever anybody here wants to do anytime, I'm available after 5 and that on.
But you would want all this information beforehand, right, before we come
Well,
back?
because we just need a number. That's all I want. I'm not asking for much beyond that, I just want a number that we know this is what it is, this is where it's coming from, and then let's put every single position on the board. Because looking at this is just arbitrary to me. I would actually like to see that laid out in front of me and saying, this is the position right here, Lorenzo, that we're going to move over here. And that's why we're getting that savings. That's just, I'm a very simple person. It works that way for me. And I'm pretty sure the rest of us here in the Finance Committee would feel that way too.
That's what I would call a true budget.
Did you get all of these?
I believe I got some of them, and I'll go ahead and call them and getting the list of them. That's okay. If Thursday would work, and people will probably could use a couple of days, and it's one of the things that
Thursday I won't be able to show up until about 6 o'clock. If that's fine with you guys, I'll be here.
Thursday, that's fine with me.
This will give everybody plenty of time to get the information that you guys asked for, and at the same time give us plenty of time to unwind and try to analyze everything that we have set forth to us right now.
Thursday at 6.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, it'll work for me. So it's just gonna be a finance committee, no regular board meeting, just a finance committee, but you guys are welcome to attend, is that right? Will that be legal?
We post the meetings that a quorum of the board may be present.
Okay.
And just a quick question, we passed the resolution at last meeting stating that we would offer the benefits to our part-time employees, anybody who works between 15 and 20 hours. You know, and I know that is, I think, in the interest for everybody to have health insurance and have health benefits. But it's a struggle for the school district to figure out who's the sub gonna be, and, you know, is the sub gonna work 15 hours this week and 20 next, and you know, and I know Mr. Vera said, well, that's why you gotta look and just project. But it's my understanding that some school districts are not going to be offering that benefit, and my question, is it mandatory?
Ms. Padilla, what did you hear at the budget hearing?
That it was mandatory.
That's why we passed it.
Right,
because
right, yeah.
It's federal law.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
And what we need, Ms. Padilla, is how many employees would fall into that category? How do you foresee it impacting our budget for next year, so that we can go ahead and include it in those totals and the amounts that are there, so we get a more accurate.
Well, if the subs are rotated, it won't impact our budget that much. But if it's the same subs coming over and over again, then it's gonna impact our budget.
But you've also got to consider how big your sub pool is.
That too?
Can we have clarification, I'm sorry, can we have clarification on that mandate? Because it was my understanding that if it's part-time employee, it is mandated. But for substitutes, it falls differently. Can we clarify that?
If they work between 15 and 20 hours, it's a mandate.
But the thing is that, I'm saying it's not a schedule, it's not a schedule.
Exactly.
You're not scheduled every week to work 15 hours a week.
No, I agree.
And that's why
It's difficult.
It's difficult, how do you, if we're gonna
But-
struggle with this in Mora, what are they gonna do?
But you know, the issue is this, that's an amount of money that needs to be accounted for.
Yes.
And if I was in a sense talking about those last two proposals, 7 and 8, of being 15,000 and 16,000, I doubt that the policy coming forth for medical or health benefits is gonna be less than that. It's probably gonna be more than that, maybe in the $50,000 to $70,000 range.
Sometimes you see the same sub here all 5 days of the week.
And so, I mean, $70,000 is a big chunk of money. I mean, that's another position if you're, you know, whatever. And that's all I'm asking, is I just wanna feel comfortable with the numbers that we have for it. And then feel very confident in what we can propose and go forward with that. In terms of looking at proposals that we have currently up here, I mean, to me, it's a crapshoot, just like throwing darts and say, okay, these two look good right now. But then if we meet again as a finance committee and they don't work out based on numbers, because there might only be 4 positions getting, you know, vacant, or 5, and we have more numbers than that we have to stick in there, then you're looking at a RIF, a true RIF.
Thank you, Mr. Vigil. Amanda,
Well, my question is, I think we should start since the beginning, is actually looking at our salaries as a whole school. Because I know coming in, I was given 2 different salary scales. So some teachers are paid in one, some teachers are paid in another. That can't be happening in a school district, that's actually against the law. And I know for a fact that does happen because, I mean, you talk within teachers. So some teachers are being paid one pay scale, teachers are another pay scale, you can't do that. So you need to really start from the beginning and say, okay, what is our true pay scale? I really would like to know. Because you can't hire one teacher last year, or maybe she was hired 3 years ago and started at a pay scale, and then just because I come in this year, I got started at a new pay scale because they started a new pay scale. It doesn't work. Everybody has to be at the same pay scale. I mean, you could have a teacher who worked here in Mora for 5 years, and I've worked 5 years, but just because that teacher came in at a different time than I did, she's getting paid differently. And there is those pay scales out there, and there is those facts. So we need to really actually, the budget needs to go back and look, what is the true pay scale? And if the pay scale was cut down because we're trying to save money, was everybody's salaries cut down? or we're just starting the new people at a new pay scale. So it really needs to be looked at. It needs to be analyzed really well.
Have you looked at that, Ms. Sarah?
Well, remember, that's the main point that we were trying to make at the school board meeting, that there was an illegal salary schedule. It was never approved by, there was never agreement between administration and the union, and it was a lot different to the one that we signed off on, so.
Was there language in the contract that year?
I never saw contracts.
You never saw the?
All I saw was the salary
Or,
schedule.
I'm sorry, the collective bargaining agreement, was there language in that agreement that stipulated what the district could do if the union didn't come and say we want to negotiate? It fell back to the old, and that's what is not in place at this time.
That's what's not in place.
And I do recall that there were concerns, but.
Was it August or September?
It was a question asked to Superintendent Garcia. He was the truth.
Yeah, that's why we had the vote of no confidence and everything, because that we found that was and there were other things, but like positions were created that were never approved with the union, and so a lot of things were going on. I have a letter from the state saying that we can recall all those decisions that we made too. So, in fact, we were advised to do so.
Okay, Mrs. Zamero, do you agree with the three finance committee members that we gather that information and come back on Thursday at 6 p.m.?
I'm fine with that, Mr. Trujillo. That works for me. That would be fine. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the salary schedules from the information, Ms. Valdez, in regard to salary schedules. Could you shed a little light on?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the salary schedules are approved annually, and they're only for the current school year. All of our salary schedules say that they are for placement of new hires only, and no one's salary was decreased. Everyone's salary the contract reads, it's based on the annual increase. This year there's a 1% increase. If you look at the salary schedule, everyone last year got their salary and they got their $1 increase. It doesn't mean they were grandfathered in basically to the salary schedule where they came in at. And so, but salary schedules don't, your collective bargaining agreement does fall back to the previous year. Your salary schedules go in with budget, and so last year we presented, the board approved salary schedules, and those got presented to PD with the budget.
I think the question might have been though that the CBA didn't match or didn't. They didn't sign off on it.
If we don't agree and sign off on it, then it falls back to the previous year. So we never agreed on that salary schedule. In fact, we asked for it many times and we were denied access to it, okay? So I think somebody was trying to keep it a secret. And maybe that's why, because they knew that it didn't, they had not followed the civil bargaining agreement. So.
I'd just like to comment, I have been a part of the collective bargaining union since I've been here 15 or plus years. And the reason that it was negotiations were not open the previous year is because as a union we felt we couldn't communicate with the superintendent at that time. So everything stayed the same. We chose to keep it at what it was for that reason, because we didn't feel we had the communication with the past administrator. As per those salary schedules, I understand what Ms. Catherine is saying, that they're for new hires. But from what I understand in the collective bargaining agreement is any kind of salary schedule needed to be negotiated amongst union and school district. And then it needed to be ratified by our union members, our collective bargaining members. That had never that hadn't happened. It's been almost 2 years that has happened, because I have been on it and I have the documentation from the previous years of negotiation.
Okay, so 6 o'clock, Mr. Vasquez, on Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Get all that information to all board members, Padilla, Mr. Melo, and to the finance committee. And I think Mr. Solomon should be here then. Be here. All right.
Thank you, sir. Will it be as much fun as today?
There'll be more fun. So, any other discussion, any other comments from the finance committee or principals or the other? Go ahead, Ms.
On a positive note, our K3 Plus application was granted.
What?
The K3 Plus grant was granted, so on a positive note. Just on that.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go ahead and thank everybody who's here. Obviously, it is an important thing that we're dealing with right now. It affects a lot of people. I want to thank you guys all for your efforts, for your questions, and for helping us out with this thing.
And before we adjourn, I would like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss limited personnel matters. Motion by Mrs. Casados, second by Mr. Vigil. Roll call.
Mr. Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Vigil?
Yes.
Mr. Trujillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lujan? Yes. Mr. Sana?
Yes.